Analysis: the Middle East vortex, when a shadow war bursts into the open. The 12-day conflict between Iran and Israel, culminating in alleged U.S. airstrikes on Iranian nuclear facilities and a subsequent fragile ceasefire, is not an isolated event. It marks the violent eruption of a shadow war that has simmered for years. This escalation is now dangerously redrawing the rules of engagement, the balance of power, and the future of security in the Middle East. This is not merely a story of a ceasefire. It is about a perilous new chapter where adversaries have moved from clandestine operations to direct state-on-state confrontation. 1. The end of the old rules of the game and the dawn of direct confrontation. For years, the Iran-Israel-US conflict played out primarily through indirect channels: cyber attacks, assassinations of scientists, support for regional proxies, Hezbollah, Houthis, and covert strikes. The recent events, however, have shattered this paradigm. From deterrence to action, the US airstrike on 3 of Iran's nuclear facilities was more than just an attack. It was a declaration that Washington and its ally Israel were willing to cross the highest red line, a direct military strike on sovereign Iranian territory, targeting its most prized national program. Iran's compulsory retaliation. Iran's retaliatory strike on a U.S. base in Qatar was a carefully calibrated move. It was forceful enough to save face domestically and with its allies, proving Iran is not a paper tiger. Simultaneously, it opened a door for diplomacy, as evidenced by President Trump's immediate call for a ceasefire. This shows Tehran has mastered the art of controlled escalation to force its adversary to the negotiating table. The broader view. We are witnessing the establishment of a new and far more dangerous threshold for confrontation. Both sides have now tested each other's limits and understand that a direct attack will be met with a direct response. The current ceasefire is merely a tactical pause, not a durable peace. 2. The war of narratives, information as a weapon. One of the fiercest fronts in this conflict is not on the ground, but in the media and intelligence reports. The ambiguity of damage. The discrepancy between the U.S. claim of completely destroying the Fordow facility and the skepticism from satellite imagery and independent analysts is a classic example of information warfare. For the U.S., declaring success aims to project an image of decisive leadership ahead of potential negotiations and to reassure Israel. For Iran, claiming to have evacuated personnel and nuclear materials while downplaying the damage serves to maintain domestic morale and deny the enemy a victory. The battle for the narrative. Iran claims to have imposed the ceasefire on the enemy, while the U.S. states it requested one. The answer to who initiated the de-escalation will shape the perception of who won and who lost this round of the crisis. The broader view. In modern geopolitics, perception is often more potent than reality. Controlling the information flow, shaping the narrative, and creating strategic ambiguity have become tools of power as formidable as missiles and fighter jets. 3. The nuclear paradox, attacks fueling proliferation. The stated goal of the U.S. and Israel was to cripple Iran's nuclear program. However, this military action may be producing the exact opposite result: loss of faith in diplomacy. Iran's suspension of cooperation with the International Atomic Energy Agency (IAEA) is a gravely serious step. Tehran argues that IAEA resolutions paved the way for the attacks, creating a dangerous precedent. If a nation feels international mechanisms fail to protect it, it will abandon them. The need for an ultimate deterrent. The strikes have proven one thing to the hardliners in Tehran: only the possession of a nuclear weapon can provide the ultimate security guarantee against foreign attack. The airstrikes may have destroyed a few facilities, but they have powerfully reinforced the political will to pursue a nuclear bomb as a life insurance policy for the regime. The broader view. This is a classic security dilemma. One side's actions to increase its own security, US-Israeli strikes, are perceived by the other, Iran, as an existential threat, prompting it to take defensive measures, pursuing a weapon that, in turn, make the first side feel even less secure. This escalatory spiral is incredibly difficult to break. 4. The multipolar geopolitical chessboard, China and regional powers step. In this crisis is no longer the exclusive domain of the United States. The active involvement of other actors demonstrates a changing world order. China's role. Beijing not only condemned the US attack but also engaged in active diplomacy with both Iran and Turkey. China is positioning itself as a responsible great power and a patron for nations resisting Western pressure. Its support for Iran's sovereignty and national security is a clear message to Washington that Iran is not alone. Turkey and the Islamic bloc, OIC, the calls for peace from Turkey and the Organization of Islamic Cooperation and their emphasis on the Palestinian issue as the core of regional instability show regional powers attempting to set their own agenda. They are linking the Iran crisis to other long-standing regional grievances to forge a united, albeit nominal, Islamic front. The broader view, American dominance in the Middle East, is being challenged. A multipolar power structure is emerging, where China, Russia, and regional powers like Turkey are seeking to fill power vacuums and offer alternatives to the US-led order. Conclusion and outlook. The current ceasefire is the quiet before a potential storm. This crisis has pushed the world into uncharted territory where the old rules no longer apply. The future will hinge on the answers to several critical questions. Will the proposed US-Iran talks materialize and yield results? Or are they merely a tactical maneuver by both sides to buy time? How far will Iran advance its nuclear program in the dark without IAEA oversight? How will Israel and the US react if they find evidence that Iran is on the verge of building a bomb? Would a larger, more devastating war become inevitable? How will the roles of China and Russia shape this crisis? Will they provide a diplomatic and economic safety net for Iran? This confrontation has transcended the scope of a nuclear program. It has become a test of the world order, a battle of military strength, economic endurance, and the power to shape the global narrative. The Middle East, and indeed the world, holds its breath for the next move on this perilous chessboard.